What's up, y'all? It's the Relentless podcast where we're stirring up passion and purpose for marriage.
That's right. We're diving into topics you always wanted to talk about. Real life, real struggles, real love, and real results. So what are we waiting for? Let's go in.
Welcome back, y'all, to the Relentless Love podcast. It's so good to see y'all. Hope y'all are enjoying it. We changed the time to make sure it worked for y'all.
Trying to accommodate, man.
Yes. So if you're enjoying it, make sure you like and subscribe. And if you already did, be sure to share this with somebody who needs it. Even if they don't need it, they're going to need it at some point.
Facts. The more the merrier. We always say, man, bring more people to the party, man. Get them in the room. Get them in here and hear some of this content that we're getting, because we're learning as we go. We're absorbing new content as we go too. We just came back from a parenting conference. Shout out to XO Marriage, man. Amazing organization that we're grateful to be a part of, man. But they were talking about parenting. What? How many parenting conferences do you know about, right? Like, this is like, come on, man, we need this. For those who are in the thick of parenting, to those who are thinking about it, right? Like, and so we got a lot of gyms. They even brought us on stage at one point. I'm like, yo, how did we get on stage, man? So, like, it was, they asked us something about a raffle, right?
Yeah, well, fun fact, we never really win raffles, or I should say rarely. I can't even recall a time that we won one.
Facts.
But we won this because it was about the worst diaper blowout story.
We had a crazy one. I'll spare y'all the details, right? I'm not going to go there because I'll probably get back into some shock. And you too.
I don't know if it was the story or just your great storytelling.
It was a mix of both. It had to be a big deal because we won. It was hundreds of people that we never win. I'll be salty when we don't win rallies. I'm like, I bought the raffle tickets. We showed up first on time. I'm late. We like, let's get there so we can win something. And we never win. But we won with this story.
We won with that
Maybe
story.
We'll tell y'all at another time. But it was amazing experience. And we wanted to kind of segue into, let's talk a little bit about parenting,
Yes, because a lot of the couples, if we reflect, the ones that we work with in mediation, parenting is really one of the primary issues that ends up coming up because you're either prioritizing the kids over the spouse, or y'all are not in agreement about discipline. It's just always something really with the kids. So whether you have them or not, I feel like you can benefit from this.
You're going to benefit from it. You're going to benefit from it because it really stems around, like, a lot of it is around control. Wanting to be in control, wanting to control what's happening, what's not happening, want to be the dominant parent, want to be the one that's kind of the favorite, and you kind of getting these back and forth and all that. Like, the heart is, I think, in the end of the day, is like, you want your children to be healthy. Right. You want your children to be on a track to success. You want your children to grow up and have children and be healthy, and then you building a legacy. I mean, that's important. How we get there is important too. Absolutely. And what they see modeled for them is important along the way.
And if we're honest, just like marriage, we tend to do it our way, and we're helping couples figure out how to do it God's way. But it's the same with parenting. We're doing the best we can. We're figuring it out as we go. We don't always have the best model to follow after. And so we want to come up with tools and tips so we can have a plan, and we're actually being intentional and forward thinking, right? We're usually reacting to situations or overreacting.
Because we don't have a handbook.
We don't have a handbook.
Maybe we started one. I don't know. Maybe you just wrote a book. Maybe we'll kind of put some stuff together. Like,
we'll see. Yeah, as well, y'all get to hear about our mistakes that we're learning from.
And we make them.
Yes.
Trust me.
A lot of them. But again, we want to empower you and ourselves to see our family as multi-generational, not just thinking about what's happening now, because the decisions we make now are affecting not just our kids' future, but their kids and their kids. And so we want to live with the end in mind and just be more intentional and strategic.
Yeah, facts. So let's just go there, right? Talking about control. We're talking about what that means, like control versus influence.
And relinquishing control and building trust, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about.
Yeah. So when I think of control, I think of like rules and parameters, right? Like the guidelines of, this is what I see happening. This is what I want to happen. This is how we're going to do it. And anybody in this is going to do it that way. And it's my way. Like the control aspect.
And let's be clear, control and rules and structure is very important.
Yeah.
It's how we implement them, how we introduce them, how we enforce or reinforce them. That's the difference maker here.
Yeah, I think the big thing you say about that is how.
Yeah.
The how we do it.
The attitude, the mindset, the perspective.
Right, yeah, and the belief behind it.
Yeah.
The belief behind it, is it my way, or do I have some grace?
Right.
Is there some wiggle room?
And are we partnering together?
Mm-hmm.
Are we collaborating? Are we contributing our different vantage points and
Mm-hmm.
perspectives and backgrounds? And are we willing to lay that down and say, okay, can we adopt a new way together?
Yeah. Facts. And it becomes a tug of war if
Mhm.
you're specifically talking about husbands and wives,
Right.
or those who are co-parenting. If you're co-parenting, you're not a husband and wife, but you kind of got that dynamic going on, right? Like, it's a tug of war of my way's best.
Exactly.
I know my child better than you know my child, or I know that they're wired a certain way to where I gotta lean in a little bit heavier and take more control and do it my way. And then it ends up being this friction that happens because there's a fight for control and what I think is best, or what I believe is best, versus what's best for the influence of the child, and how we partner together to make sure that we have, one, great rules in place, but also that the kids know our heart behind what we're doing, and they don't play favorites on us.
But what the other side of that coin is, just between the one parent and the child, if the desire for control is rooted in an unrealistic fear, then you kind of overcompensate. So for example, I can think of quite a few wives that we've worked with, and because of past hurts or trauma they've experienced, then you tend to make super strong boundaries. The limits are very tight. And then you create that, wild child, because your intentions are good, but you're basing it on your frame of reference, your experience. And then you may have a spouse who doesn't agree, and they don't have a voice or a choice.
But that influence, what it plays in is that if you don't have influence with your spouse, you're just throwing a bunch of rules around.
Right.
And then the belief can be, man, it always gotta be her way.
Right.
She always want to control everything. Influence is, hey, let me bring you into my world and let you know my perspective and where I'm coming from and why I feel like this is important, and not forcing a bunch of rules or expectations out and saying, I just know what's best. Here you go.
Right.
That's, I think, where a lot of the tension comes in, because a lot of conversations not really being had. And then somebody's just taking the initiative. Well, somebody got to do it. I'm just going to do it.
Right.
And now that control factor gets in, and then we just see tons of breakdown. But who's affected? The kid.
The kids. And it's important to remember, you mentioned influence, and that's really ultimately what we need with our kids, not the control. Again, that's the parameters and boundaries for their safety. But influence is, man, they value my voice.
Particularly for kids, yes. Yeah, and how we're raising them and what we want to allow them to do and experience versus what we don't. I mean, even from, crawling around on the floor age, right? Or they crawling away. Hey, where we gonna put the little gate up at? Right. We need a little gate to keep you from going in the fireplace. But you don't want the gate
so tight that
they can't move.
That they're not eating a little dirt, right? Because I've heard that about some kids.
Yeah, kids eating dirt out here,
right?
Man.
Well, no. What happens?
We know
the ones that are ultra clean, which, hey, no knock to that. It's important, right? Yeah. But what happens is then they go to school and their immune system is not built up because you sterilize the environment. So it's just a balance in the middle.
Yeah, true. You making me think back to some of that stuff, like, your kid gets sick because you don't let them. You don't let them go out there and play in the yard,
or they can't explore because you put so many, boundaries that you're afraid of them getting hurt. Well, we're all gonna get hurt. So obviously, there's some age appropriate parameters, but just be aware. What is your motivation? Is it a fear? Is it a realistic fear? Is it an overreaction?
Especially as they get older.
Yes.
Because once you get up into the teens, like we got a 15-year-old now, right? And so there's sometimes you gotta like relinquish control and trust that you have somewhat of an influence in your child's life to where when you speak, they're listening.
Right.
Because they're gonna at some point you're not gonna be the main voice.
Right.
They're gonna have phones, they're gonna have friends, they're gonna have Google, they gonna have all kind of stuff, TV, all kind of stuff, influence. And so, are you gonna try to control that, or you're gonna try to allow for like influence.
Right.
They're gonna have the seeds I planted. They're gonna come to me when they need it. What am I fighting more for? Control or influence, right? And that's a big thing as they get older.
But it starts when they're younger. So we have to prioritize the relationship over the rules and enforcing the rules. And there has to be some flexibility. So with that said, kind of moving into discipline, because that's a big point of contention for most couples.
Yeah, we I remember some conversations. Why are you yelling at him like that? Why are you talking? I mean, we've had them and we heard them. Like, he don't need to hear that, or she don't need to get disciplined like that, or what's the appropriate way? This child's inclined a certain way to respond to certain things. What's this? And that, a lot of times going into relationships, you ain't talking about that on your first date or a few months in. Hey, what do you think about this? Nobody's talking about that. And even when you have a baby and the baby's, you know,
and then they start to get sleep at night.
Right. You just like, we're not sitting down over lunch talking about, well, what's the best way to discipline our children? It just comes up and you caught off guard. And one night or one morning or one day after work, somebody gonna do it in a way you don't agree with.
Right.
And then you're gonna be like,
and usually it's tied to our trauma. If I'm honest, where I've overreacted is because it reminds me of how I was spoken to or how I was treated. So it's just important to have those conversations, have a plan, but then still hold the plan loosely, because every child is different, every age and stage is different. And so it's just having that communication of, hey, but remember, we're in this together. Like, we're on the same team.
We on teams, and we not. A lot of this has not been given to us ahead of time. Hey man, are y'all talking about how y'all gonna discipline little baby girl when she get 1 or 2 years old? Are y'all gonna tap her hand? Are y'all gonna just pick her up and look at her and say this? What is it to where you not triggered by something that your spouse does, and then you don't have a safe place to talk about it, so you stuff it down. And then over time, you just laid up looking at your spouse upside their head, angry at them, and now y'all ain't even on one accord. How's that gonna play out? A little bit more attention from one spouse to another, a little bit more gentleness. And how can that play out? Oh, now the kid can play on those emotions. Well, mama ain't gonna really do me like that, or daddy ain't gonna really do nothing, so I'ma just.
And it creates
division.
And tension. Yeah, and just recognizing, like, we all have different parenting styles. It may not even be based on how you were raised. It's just part of your personality. Some are more rigid and strict. I think they call it authoritarian. But in the middle is that authoritative, where there's control, but there's flexibility. I've heard it taught in childcare settings, like, think about a ball, right? It's firm, but it's flexible. And to be honest with parenting, we have got to be flexible.
You gotta be flexible. Yeah. There's different seasons for different stuff, right? Like, you can't just do the same thing when they was 5 years old, and then you got a 12, 13-year-old, and you still treating them like a 5-year-old. Like, that ain't gonna work. You gotta be able to be fluid and adapt to that.
To their needs.
But discipline is necessary.
And how can you know their needs or where they're at or what they're struggling with if you don't have that relationship? So whatever you choose, make sure you're on the same page, but also do it in love. Make sure love and grace, it's wrapped in that.
Yeah, definitely. Between you two and respecting of partnership, as well as authority and headship and leadership and all that kind of stuff. But then also, like, don't be disciplining your kids just because you just pissed off because you had a long day at work. And then you got, because of your long day at work, you like, I'm finna whoop everybody. I'm finna yell at everybody. Like, that can kind of get toxic.
Yes.
And that's where a lot of times anger creeps in when it comes to some of these things. It's like, it's not discipline at this point, it's rage and anger.
Yes.
And we got to kind of guard ourselves.
And it requires self-awareness, but that's the importance. Sometimes we can't see when we're in that mode. And so we have to have even that relationship with our spouse and that safety that we can keep it real without the other one taking offense to it. And that's not easy.
Right. We all get there. We have moments too where Dominique be like, babe, you on one. Like, you need to go cheer, go do something, go play the game, go do something. Like, you're tight. And it may have been a stressful time or something going on, and you got to kind of fall back. And that's times where Dominique have a long day, stressful day. And she's like, I ain't got time for it. I'm like, but kids hey, y'all come on, stay out the way.
Yes.
Right?
And that's
We
the
all get
power
there.
of partnership, because we're not gonna be on our best, day every day.
Right.
And so we cover each other. And I've said that, honey, listen, I need you to take over because I need a minute. Like it's not gonna be in love right now.
It's real. It's real. And the kids will feel that too. And we don't want them to feel that. I got some great mentors. Larry Titus, great mentor, spiritual influence to me, and personally life influence to me, man. Just very humble, meek, just gentle. I mean, just really, really like a very good model of what a man in controlled strength is, because he's a powerhouse, meekness, right? But he gentle. He always told me, he said, man, you ain't got to do all that.
Yeah.
You don't have to do all that to be a leader and be head, right? You can do everything in meekness and in gentleness and in kindness, right? And still maintain a sense of authority and a sense of leadership in your home. And that you kind of got to fight for that within yourself.
You do.
Right? But it takes some awareness and some partnership to reel some of that stuff in and realize, like, am I being disciplinary out of anger, or am I being disciplinary out of this is what my child needs in the moment to course correct them?
And it's super important, because just like our marriage reflects our relationship with God, our parenting reflects our child's relationship with God. And if we don't get it right, if we're not modeling that meekness and gentleness that is actually the heart of God, this is why some, parents with adult kids are wondering why their kids aren't in church. It's because you were acting one way in the church and then a totally different way at home. Right?
Yeah, I heard that story a lot. Praise God. Praise God in the church. And they get home and they like an animal at home, or just going completely the opposite.
We've been guilty when you're tired, when you're overwhelmed. But don't be so above apologizing, like, man, I was too hard. I'm sorry. I have had that moment this week.
Yeah. You do. You got to take ownership of that. And that's a process. Really, a lot of it is also stemmed to, like, where you at with your relationship with the Lord? Like, is your cup full?
Yeah.
Are you been spending time with God? Are you showing up broken as a parent, right? Or are you not getting your cup full and you showing up empty, and then it's kind of spilling out over everybody else? That's a big thing that needs to happen as well.
So let's talk about trust and autonomy. The goal for parenting is we don't want them, when they're 18, still depending on us to do things, to make decisions.
Right.
And so there's a slow release of control that's age appropriate, that is tailored to each kid and their need and their maturity level. So let's talk through that. How do we navigate that at every age, from young to adult children?
Hopefully y'all are vibing and jiving as spouse or co-parents, wherever you find yourself. But one is like, are we both evaluating? Are we both present with our, because sometimes you can have kids and just not be present.
Yeah.
You just workaholic, or you just not very relational and you don't want to be around. Like, there's no condemnation, no judgment, but sometimes, depending on where you land, you may not even be aware of what type of child you have.
Right. Or how they learn, how they respond best to, correction or redirection.
So just starting with that is like the awareness of, okay, I know how Chloe's wired. I know how such and such is wired. I know how such and such wired. What do you think? What have you been seeing? Oh, I see this and that. That's partnership and awareness of, these are where our children are in their stages of life. What can they handle? What can they not handle? What's too much? What do they respond negatively to? What do they respond positively to? And how can we agree on, is it more beneficial to cut a little bit more rope off and let them go a little further, or not, because they ain't ready? And that varies. You can have a younger one that's just need a little bit more rope, and one older one like, no, they ain't ready. But if you just go by age and just think, oh yeah, they're 15 or they 12, they can just, are you really in tune with where they are, what they're doing, what their propensities are, and what they can handle? And are you and your spouse or co-partner talking about that, so y'all can make an informed decision, not just with one perspective, but with two? Right? I think that's a real big thing.
That's super important. I think also we've been really intentional about, like, empowering the kids, like, with more chores and cooking and things that
them
sometimes
kids clean up. I even got my kids trying to get them to get in and cook and wash clothes and do, like a lot of stuff in the yard, all that. Like, let them do it.
Yeah.
They can do it.
Yeah, and we get mad at husbands that, you know, don't put the toilet seat down and don't pick up. It's because we, you know, if we're honest, parents they want to do everything because you feel like you're being a good parent, but what you're really doing is enabling them, and you're robbing them of opportunities to grow and mature and learn responsibility.
Yeah, definitely. We've been slowly releasing some of our younger ones to do more things, like you said, the cooking thing. Like, hey, you can stir this, you can mix that, you can get up here and do this, set the table, clean up, like all that. We got things that are in place that they can handle. Yeah. But even further along the way, like with our more older one, is like, okay, how are we gonna slow release technology?
Right.
How we gonna slow release things where we already know what kind of world we live in.
Managing finances.
Right?
I think we've been even trying to practice that.
Stuff like that. Like, what are you ready for? What are you not ready for? How can we take some of the ropes off and let, hey, go a little further, man. Go a little further out there. You good. But we are in agreement. She not just making a decision and I just show her one day like, wow, what is this? What are you letting him or her do?
Right.
You didn't talk to me about it. Like, we've been discerning for a while, and we've been on the same team for a while to be able to come together, talk about it, and then make decisions on what we can trust them and give them a little bit more freedom.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about couples where they've had conflict. You know, we've encouraged them have that monthly meeting or that weekly check-in, you know, to talk about things, not just the calendar, not just the finances, but even partnership, so that we can be ahead of the issues or ahead of what's going on.
Right.
And sometimes one parent might be more hands-on and the other one's not aware. Well, then you have to be really intentional about creating the space.
We've been there. Talk. I've been like, what? Well, y'all didn't tell me what going on. Right. You be so busy and going on. Like, I'm out of the loop. I don't know. But like, it happens. Right. But that's the results of communication, intimacy, and continuing to work together as a team. And this thing called parenting. And it happens to all of us, man.
And I think one of the most important things is just creating opportunities or a safe space for them to make mistakes and learn while they're still under the nest, you know, or in the nest. And there's a safety net versus them figuring things out and messing up out in the world on their own.
Facts. I mean, I think, I know we struggle with it because we're high performance people. We've achieved high achievers and kind of do the best we can in the spirit of excellence. But excellence is not perfection.
That's right.
Excellence is you did the best you could with what you have, right? And you gave your best effort, and that's okay. So making a mistake and giving your best effort is not something to be criticized for or to be put down for or to be like not graceful with. And that's a dance, because you kind of have to understand that for yourself too and how you're wired. Right. But sometimes we don't want our kids to make mistakes. Or we don't allow them to make mistakes.
Yes.
And then it ends up creating an anxiety in them.
And if we're honest, just like fear is really the root of control, that perfection is also control, and this lack of self-esteem and value. Like when we see our kids as like a trophy and how they perform as a reflection on me, then we can put this undue pressure on them to show up a certain way. And so again, we have to go to God and make sure that deep need of identity and security is rooted in Him and not in how, because you can do the best things and give your kids all the wisdom and create the perfect environment, and they're still going to grow up and make their own choices.
Man. You can't in control. That's that relinquishing control, relinquishing your expectations of who they need to manifest into to be, right? You can have the best wishes, but if you put a weight of expectation on them to fit some kind of description and then they don't, you're going to personalize it, attack them, put them down, or say they're not good enough. I mean, the easiest example that always comes up in these kind of conversations is the dad who was a great athlete, and then his son grows up and now he puts the weight of expectation. Well, you got to be the same, and I'm going to be hard on you, and you better not make. That's the cliche example of trying to make somebody be great because you think they're supposed to be as of a high performer as you are, and then maybe they miss the mark or don't measure up. And then they feel less than.
But in subtle ways, it's the spilled milk. And how do you respond? Do you get frustrated, or do you, oh, it's okay, honey?
Right.
Or if they clean up and they do something and then they see you come behind them and fix it, whether we say it or we are assertive and aggressive, or we just go and clean up the mess, we're communicating something. And the goal is to communicate trust. Like, I'm trusting you to do this, and I'm not going to come back behind you.
I remember catching myself on that a few times with the girls.
Yeah.
Like, they break a plate or something. I'm like, man, what? And then I think back like, oh, they're trying to reach something up high. Like, it's going to happen. It's not the end. We got a lot more plates.
Right.
Like, the own while I clean it up and just be grateful nobody got hurt.
Yeah.
Like, there's a difference. Like, oh, something happened. It was an accident. Or did they intentionally do something? Right.
Yeah.
Or like, man, I could go off on this, but I'm grateful it wasn't worse than what it was. What do we focus on in these moments?
And we have to say it because in the kids' mind, man, I messed up. I'm a mess up. I'm a failure. I made daddy mad again. And then they're creating this narrative in their minds.
So these are big things that you can catch them ahead of time. For those that aren't there, for those that are there, you like, yeah, that was me. That was me. I know. I do that, right? Like,
grace has to be in this process for ourselves, for our spouses, and especially for the kids. So what are some key takeaways we can leave with the listeners?
Everything we just said. No, really, just like, this is the main priority.
That's right.
In marriage particularly, it's going to God first, making sure you secure your identity and who you are, your security, that you know that he's going to take care of your family. He blessed you with the kids. So he has a plan for them and he's going to take care of them, right? And making sure that you're able to show up with your spouse, your partner, and that you prioritizing this first.
Yeah.
Because if both of y'all ain't on one accord and ain't showing up healthy for each other and having a game plan, somewhat of a game plan for parenting your children, it's going to create conflict.
Yeah.
And who's going to be watching? When that little 1-year-old grow up to be 2, 3, 4, she watching y'all fight, argue,
kids feel it.
and they going to experience it.
They do.
So you have to prioritize this first, right? Don't just immediately put the baby on the throne. Right? They're going to get their needs, but y'all discuss the time and the agenda and how y'all going to approach these things that we just talked about together first, so that y'all walking in agreement and they don't see division in your home and then start to play on that. I think that would be the biggest takeaway I would give, is that priority number one, this, but God first, and then let that flow down to your children.
Yeah. I would say the relationship over rules, and knowing that our relationship with our kids reflects the relationship they're going to have with God. And so just approaching that with grace and meekness and love and gentleness. Not that we're going to get it right every time, but that we can be humble enough to acknowledge where we messed up. And, create that safety and freedom that God creates for us to find ourselves and explore. But we're close enough to catch them when they fall.
Yeah. And don't put a weight of expectation on yourself to be a perfect parent. And let your kids know too, like, man, I'm flawed too. I'm learning how to do this too. Like, I ain't got it together. I want it to be better. I ain't there yet, but I'm growing with you. Right. Like, I tell my son all the time, like, man, he's like, I ain't never been 15 before. I was like, I ain't never had a 15-year-old before. Like, we growing together, and let's just not give up on each other. And so for you as a parent, not perfect, take that perfection off. You're going to make some mistakes, but learn from it and don't keep making the same mistakes. Try to grow.
Well, I hope y'all enjoy this. Please send us some feedback. Let us know more parenting tips that you need. If you need coaching on marriage, if you need help with a parenting plan, we are here for you. You're not alone. You can schedule a free discovery call. So please contact us. You are not in this by yourself.
Hit us up for sure, man. Much more content to come. Again, like, subscribe, follow, share with everybody. Let's blow it up. Let's keep this thing going. Relentless Love Podcast, live and direct, man. We love y'all. Till next time. Peace.
See y'all next Thursday.